we're talking about buying a home, whether you're in a couple and not married, or buying a home and you are in a couple and also married. So a couple of things for you to think about. Really, the big difference between these two is if you're married, then you have a way out of the relationship where you're owning the home. Whereas if you're not married, you do not have an easy way out. What do I mean by that? So if you get married and things don't work out, and in the course of your marriage you buy a house, together your divorce is going to help you facilitate figuring out the split of assets. If you're just two people, perhaps in a relationship, or if you're even two people that are unrelated to each other, say you're just friends, for instance, and you buy a property together, there's no set in stone way for you to separate your assets. So in a divorce, the courts say, hey, you, both of you, have to agree on how you're going to separate your assets. And in a friendship slash relationship where you buy a property, there is no agreed upon terms. The reason why that's actually kind of useful is if you're buying it before you get married, buying the house before you get married, you both can decide how you want to do it. And I have plenty of people, especially couples that are younger, that are interested in splitting it different ways. So perhaps it's not 50-50. Perhaps I show up to the relationship and I'm going to put 75% down, but maybe my credit's not that great. And so you are going to do the entirety of the loan. So it's a kind of a cool way that you can play to each other's strengths if you need it and be a little bit more flexible. It's interesting because lenders are going to, if you apply together, no matter whether you're married or in a relationship, or frankly, even not in a relationship and just friends or family or anything like that, the lender's going to take the two of you and smash you together and take the worst of everyone. So a lot of people think that it's an average of whoever's applying for a loan, and it's not actually an average. It's actually the lowest common denominator. So perhaps my credit's good, your credit's not so good. They're going to take your credit and my debt and smash them together and make them a less of a great credit candidate as the two of us would be separate. The reason why this matters is whether you're married or whether you're just in a relationship, it's important for you to know this, because in both of these instances, you can have the loan structured however you want. So just because you're married does not mean that you have to apply for credit together. And there are ways around it. I could buy it outright by myself and then just add you to the title. Speaking of title, so title is the ownership. It's an instrument that shows the ownership of the property. So what does that mean? If we own something together, of course, say you own a car and you have, they used to call it the pink slip, but it's really just a deed to your car. You can have multiple people listed on there as who owns the property. So in a relationship and in a marriage, typically you're going to want to understand, and this is the big piece, how you want things to go if you should pass away. And the deed plays a lot of a part in that. Meaning, if you and I are in a relationship, say we're not married, and say we own a house together, I might want, if I pass away, my half of the house, let's just say it's split 50-50, I might want my half of my house to go to my niece, for instance, instead of going directly to you. Now, in Oregon, most of the time, they assume if you're married that you want your half of the house to go to your spouse. That doesn't have to be the case if that's not what you want. So these are the hard conversations you're going to have when you're buying a house together, whether you're married or whether you're not. So the big thing that you need to remember, and you're going to just hear this whenever you decide to buy a property with someone, um, you're going to be called tenants in common. So most of the time when people buy property together, they're buying it as tenants in common. And anybody can buy anything as tenants in common. And then from there, you have to decide how you're going to split it. So it could be I own 75%, you own 25%. And then after we figure that out, we have to figure out, do I give my part to you when I die or vice versa? These are big questions, and a lot of times when people are buying houses, they don't think about this. So I often am facilitating these weird conversations, especially if you're young, you're not thinking, oh, what happens to my half of the house if I die? But that is all going to be specified in the deed, so you have to decide that up front. Now, you can change the deed if you want to. So, if down the road, I don't know, I come into the lottery and I give you more money so that now we're a 50-50 split, you can change the deed to reflect whatever changes in your relationship that you make. So it's not something that cannot be changed. So we've talked about the loan issues. We've talked about the title issues. Now there's one more thing. And that is what happens with your principal residence, so tax deductions. Typically, whoever is on the loan gets the full amount of the tax deduction. Now, this is going to depend on your CPA, and you're going to want to talk to an accountant about this. I have seen accountants agree to, let's say I'm on the loan totally. My partner is not on the loan at all, but we're splitting the costs 50-50. I have seen CPAs say, hey, it's okay if I want half of the tax deduction and give you half of the tax deduction because you've been contributing to pay the mortgage every month. I have seen that work, but you're going to want to talk to your accountant specifically to see what would work for you. So that's the first thing. Second thing, and this is true of whether you're in a relationship, married, or single. And because married, you can file jointly or single. And then in a relationship, I'm assuming you're both filing singly. So typically you can split the interest and deductions however you want, but you want to talk to your accountant about that. Then secondly, if you're both living in the property and have owned and lived in it for 2 out of the last 5 years, there's this magical thing called the principal residence exclusion. What that means is when you both go to sell the property, you are going to be exempt from capital gains if you meet those 2 tests: lived in and owned it for 2 out of the last 5 years. If you do that, each of you individually gets $250,000 of gain tax free. So let me give you an example because this is very difficult to understand. Say me and my partner bought a house for $500,000. We own it and live in it for, say, 10 years. And in 10 years, it's now worth $1 million. And I'm doing this because that's easy math. So we bought the property for $500,000. We're selling it for $1 million. So that is $500,000 of gain. Now that $500,000 of gain, let's say if we took a different example and say we put that money in the stock market. Say we invested $500,000 in the stock market and we invested it well and it turned into $1 million. Now all of you know that that would be $500,000 of money that you have to pay taxes on because you increased the value of it. With your primary residence, that is not true. So in the instance that we were just describing, we have $500,000 of gain. 250 of it is tax-free to me. 250 of it can be tax-free to my partner. And that is true whether you're married or whether you're not. You could even not be married or even in a relationship. It doesn't matter as long as it's lived there and owned it for 2 out of the last 5 years. This is like the expert level class on on understanding the subtleties of real estate. So of course you're probably going to have questions. So just comment below or just reach out to me because I'm happy to explain this stuff. And this is really where it makes a difference in your planning for your future and making sure that it's right. If you have any other additional questions that you'd like me to address, I would be happy to do so. Just comment below and we'll address it in the future, dear Claire. And of course, remember to subscribe to our Paris Group Realty LLC YouTube channel and see all the other additional info that we have there. Talk to you soon. Take care.